Hello and welcome to another episode of CTLN Opinion Plus. As you know, this is a space for our opinions and our concerns. This week we are talking about human rights, and we are joined today by Tanya A. Hughes. She is the Executive Director of the Commission on Human Rights and Opportunities in Connecticut. Thank you for joining us, Tanya. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having us.
Now, for those of us that don't know about your office, can you tell us about the work that the Commission does and why and when it was established?
Sure. The Commission is the oldest state-sponsored civil rights organization in the country. We were founded in 1943, originally as the Interracial Commission, and it focused mostly on race relations and employment, and eventually housing discrimination was added along with other types of discrimination. But we basically, our mission is to eliminate discrimination in the state of Connecticut, and we do that through enforcement, education, and outreach. We have 4 regional offices, a legal department, a fair housing division, a contract compliance division, which monitors state contract funding to ensure that opportunities are available to small and minority businesses. And we have another department, our affirmative action department, which oversees affirmative action for the state of Connecticut. So we have a very broad mission, as you can see.
It sounds like they really keep you busy.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask just a basic question because I don't think that this is something that we have a direct answer to. What does discrimination look like, and what does one do once they recognize it?
So discrimination is something you almost feel. It's more of a feeling of being treated differently and less favorably because of immutable characteristics such as race, color, religion, sex, gender, mental health. Those are some of the class bases that we cover. And so the law prohibits treating people differently because of those class bases. And the state of Connecticut actually has some of the most broad laws against discrimination in the country. We actually cover 27 different class bases, and we covered in the area of employment, housing, public accommodations, as well as credit and counseling.
Historically, Connecticut has had a lot of housing discrimination, and one might say segregation amongst neighborhoods.
Yes.
I'm sure it's kept you busy. What has that looked like recently? What is being done to address it?
So we're doing a number of things. We've had the same history of discrimination as many other states. You see things like race restrictive covenants and deeds prohibiting the sale of property to anyone other than white only race. That's been the history. Housing lot requirements and minimum price that limited certain groups, mostly African Americans and people of brown races, from living in more middle class neighborhoods. The result is one of most racially segregated housing markets in the country. We have many groups that are working on desegregating the housing market in Connecticut. Several bills were introduced this session, including SB 1024, Desegregate Connecticut's bill, and HB 6611, the Open Communities Fair Share bill, in order to address the continued issues with needed zoning reform in order to provide more affordable housing. There are also things like investment needs to occur in cities to neighborhoods that need new affordable housing, access to fresh food, good health care, parks, open spaces, things like that. It all overlaps and becomes somewhat of a multi-layered problem. Discrimination in public housing was prohibited in 1949, and the housing laws have slowly evolved until 1963 is when it was covered in the state of Connecticut's commission. So it covered all housing except owner-occupied two-family homes. So the commission began its, as I told you before, began its quest in 1943. And
It seems like there's a question that I asked to almost every guest, but there seems to be a very large gap between the neighborhoods of Connecticut. Connecticut is a state that houses the richest of the rich and the poorest of
right.
the poor. What can your office do to address that? And in your opinion, one can't separate discrimination and lack of opportunity from this housing issue. In your opinion, how can the gap be narrowed?
So first we have to recognize it when we see it, right? So
Mhm.
there are different ways to recognize it. They're in the areas of people who are trying to purchase property. It's not going to be so blatant. Sometimes it's clear. You want to be suspicious when you hear comments like, do you think you can afford this neighborhood? Or we just can't seem to make an appointment to show you that house. When you see that it's been available on the market for a long period of time. And then sometimes it may seem like these are reasonable or fair statements, but I find particularly in minority communities that we're hesitant to push for fair treatment. We are more willing to accept some of those discriminatory excuses and then move on. And because we feel like, well, if they don't want me there, I don't want to be there. But we have to establish a sense of belonging first, and then insisting upon getting fair treatment, whether it's in rental property or in seeking to purchase property. When you're looking in rental properties, you'll see areas where they'll say we don't accept children, or we don't take Section 8. Those are illegal statements. Any illegal form of tender should be accepted. And so we need to push back, look for agencies like ours who can assist you in getting the resources that you need. File a complaint. You need to file it within the certain statutory time period. It needs to be filed within 180 days. So we need to get to you as quickly as possible. And things like housing are really urgent. So that particular complaint needs to be investigated in a short amount of time to make certain that you aren't displaced for an extended amount of time. So the housing laws require that we investigate those complaints within 100 days, whereas in employment, you may get a year to investigate a complaint.
So in regards to housing, should someone experience something like that, whether it be with a real estate company or the building manager themselves, what are the next steps? Where do they go, and how quickly do they speak to somebody in addressing this issue?
Great. So they can come to our website, ct.gov/CHRO, and it will direct you to our Fair Housing Division. It's a free service. There is no charge for filing a complaint with us. Our housing unit is located in Hartford. However, we provide services throughout the state. And so our investigators will deploy to any area of the state. And they also utilize our regional offices. We have 4 regional offices throughout the state. And so you can find access to those right on our website. There are various drop-down boxes. Our housing unit is headed by Attorney Robert Zemlowski. He's been with our agency over 35 years. Most of our staff has been really tenured with our agency. And so I'm fortunate that I have a very passionate staff, and they're very committed to making certain that we provide services to the the state residents.
In terms of employment, you said that there could be up to a year. Doesn't it seem like employment is just as pressing as housing? How does one move forward with a case of discrimination in the workplace?
And so with employment and housing, we have what we call our mandatory mediation program. And so initially, even if we haven't fully investigated the complaint, there are different stages throughout the complaint that we try to mediate and bring the parties together. And we've been very successful at that. When I first became executive director, we had an enormous backlog of cases. And I firmly believe that justice delayed is justice denied. And so that was one of the first things that we did, was try to eliminate the backlog. And while we have up to a year to investigate cases, many of our cases are resolved early on in the process through mandatory mediation, as well as other channels like early legal intervention if they're like single issue cases or cases that may have complex legal issues. They may go directly to our legal department. But we've developed a number of different processes in our agency to help expedite the case processing time frame. And we've been very successful at that. As a matter of fact, we've had enormous success in settlements. Over the last few years, we've returned millions of dollars to state constituents in terms of either back pay or damages. And in the area of housing, we've been very effective at getting accommodations for our residents and, other things that may be needed in the area of housing. But we've been very successful at that, and I'm very proud of that.
On the website, there was a mention of requirements for new buildings to accommodate people that might need extra help. Can you tell us about how someone, let's say a building isn't up to standard, where would someone go to file a complaint with you guys?
So again, they will come to the website, speak with someone, an intake officer at our agency, and they can go to the website I gave you, or they can call 860-541-3403, 860-541-3403, and they will be able to speak with an intake officer. But with the building specifications, you really need an expert to provide, the details on that. And so we would make certain to connect you with any expert that is needed. And again, our service is free of charge.
Well, thank you for taking the time to speak to us. This has been really informative and really enlightening. I'm really glad an office like yours exists.
Please call us at any time. We, again, our staff is very, very passionate about what we do, and we've been very lucky to be able to hire recently. We may have some openings coming up in our legal division as well as investigators. We have a very robust internship program, and we're also trying to bring our next level of social rights activists up through our Kids Court Academy. So go to our website and find out some of the great things we're doing.
All right. Thank you for taking the time, Tanya. Thanks for speaking with us.
Thank you for having us.
That's all the time we have for today. Tune in next week for another episode. And don't forget to follow us on all of our social media handles at CT Latino News and Instagram, Twitter on CT Latino News and Instagram at CT_Latino News. I'm Savani Campos with CTLN Opinion Plus. See you next time.